All right. It's getting there. My camera's, so far everything's working.
Cool deal.
We just gotta happen. Anybody waiting for us?
Hasn't said anything yet.
It's just trying to load. Crazy. It's still trying to load. So let's hope this works. Yes. Yes. Okay. Are we live? Are we live? I think we are live. Finally. All right. Well, we're live on the Dial of Facebook page because Zoom decided that it didn't want to work. Didn't want to play nice today and stream. Oh my gosh. So we were early yesterday, but today we have really cloudy weather and we are satellite guys. So sorry about that, but at least our podcast is being recorded. So that will always be nice and clear. All right, well, welcome back. You know who I am, Caroline Bass of the Tao of Horsemanship, and I don't have my lovely co-host in view, but she is sitting across the table from me.
Hey guys.
Sabrina! So Sabrina's here to take questions. Today we are basically this whole week, yesterday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we're talking about retraining, and specifically the OTTB. So yesterday, for those of you that weren't able to attend, but maybe you're able to listen to the podcast, yesterday was about what you should know before you purchase your OTTB. And today we're going to talk about how to resolve trauma and challenges, how to work through negative behaviors. And tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to wrap it up with where do we begin with the retraining? How do we start the process? All right, so for those of you that are new to our podcast here, Everything Horses and More, we are, hi Atilia, this is great, one of my Mastery Membership students. We are here to educate, liberate, inspire horse owners worldwide, around the world. So join our live radio show each week, and you can help us with the revolution in horse care, training, handling, riding, and so much more. So as most of you followers that keep coming back, you know we talk a little bit about everything. This month of September, we've really dived in deep with horse training in general, really breaking it down between the old masters and theory and core principles, and also talking about the various ways horses learn and need to learn and what motivates learning in a science way and in an emotional way. And it's really important. We can continue to expand on all of these topics moving forward, but I really wanted to bring in a deep breadth or scope of the material that I know that I've been accumulating my entire life, basically. So I'm sharing it with all of you guys, and don't hesitate to ask any questions. We had quite a few great questions. All of them were great yesterday. So I really, really like the questions. All right. And you found it pretty interesting too.
Oh, absolutely, because it hits home.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just purchased, 3 years ago, we purchased Pistol. So.
Yeah, and Pistol did she race though? Here?
Yeah, she won 37,000.
Okay, and she was a broodmare.
Yeah, oh yeah, a heavy broodmare. Unfortunately, fortunately for us, but she didn't produce very good babies, we were told. So.
Yeah.
So,
where did you guys find her?
It's right here in Florida. It starts with.
Was it an auction or?
No, it's a butcher.
It's a butcher?
He's a butcher.
No, wait. You don't mean a horse slaughter.
Oh, everything.
He butchers horses too?
I never seen him doing it. Now I have seen him doing, like chicken and stuff.
Did you go to him for pig, your ham? Didn't you guys? Weren't you guys?
No. Yes. We were looking for.
Yeah, you were looking.
A butcher. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we were looking for a butcher, and we just kind of
keep talking.
fell on that, and we were talking to him. He was like, "Oh, my wife barrel races, and she was in the NBHA world, and she wanted a bunch of cock poop, if you ask me. Sorry, guys.
Bunch of shit. Bunch of bullshit. Let's just call it what it is. Yeah.
Well, anyways.
Yes.
So I was like, oh yeah, okay, blah blah blah. And he said, well, I have this mare. And
So he had her.
Yeah, he had her. And she was sold a few times. And
how old was she?
Nobody wanted her. 8.
8. She was 8.
Yeah, she was 8. She's 10 now.
Yep.
But 10 or 11. But anyways, yeah, she was crazy to other people that didn't want her. They brought her back.
She's probably all nervous and anxious and high-strung. You're typical.
She does not deal at times with pressure when it comes to being,
None of them deal with pressure very well because pressure becomes such a horrible experience in the racing and in any performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think all these people thought she's going to be this, they wanted to saddle up and run her barrels. And Pistol was like,
and she's a pretty mare. She's a gray, you guys. And a lot of people, black horses, gray horses, or spotted horses, everybody goes crazy for.
I was like, no, thank you. But my daughter was like, yes, I want to look at her. Because he had another one that was a little, well, now that I know, he was shut down, really shut down. And Peyton was like, no, Mom, no.
She connected with Pistol.
Yeah, she saw her and she was like, I want her.
Wow.
And it's actually really nice because I have pictures when they first met where Pistol actually closed her eyes. Wow.
Oh, I love it.
So, yes, she was holding her head and Pistol was closing her eyes. And,
she is her heart horse, as you say.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it real.
Yeah.
I've seen it on your Facebook posts. And
Pistol is
I love
amazing.
it. Well, your daughter is amazing. When she came to do that clinic last year with my baby, the other year it was like the Liberty, and Blue had just finished maybe a month of learning some really low-key round pen, just real connection kind of stuff. And those two were, he was asleep in her lap.
Yes.
He was, she's really great with horses.
She is. And to this day, like, it was so ironic because she was launching her in the method the other day and Pistol had her head lowered.
Oh,
and
wow.
So calm. And Peyton is a very calm person.
Yes, she is.
The minute I walked in, Peyton looked at me.
Did it change?
Yeah. She's
God,
like,
see
what
how
did you do? But that was the first time that Peyton really can see the difference in energy.
Yes.
And Pistol did not.
And that's something. You guys, this stuff is so amazing.
And I was like, I realized what I did.
And this happens in the beginning when you're retraining and when you're using my method, because the horses, you're getting them, it's this whole, we're going to talk about the nervous system again today. The science behind this, but it's so cool because in the beginning, you're going to learn so many relaxation techniques and method and approach. And my mastery membership students who participate in these podcasts all the time because they love to continue their learning, they can support what I'm talking about. So you're learning this way, this energy way, this way of presenting calm in your own body. And it's a very visceral somatic experience for you. Well, the horse, of course, can pick up on that immediately. And it's all good, but we also want to get Pistol to the point where she can handle high energy again.
Yes.
But it doesn't start there. See, everybody thinks that we're going to talk about that. It doesn't start there, though, because we have to do such a rebuilding process. It's great. Awesome. Okay. So today, when we are retraining, and again, you guys, just because I'm specializing in bringing up the off-the-track thoroughbred doesn't mean that this training doesn't work for all horses, because it does. I've worked with thousands of horses, every breed, specifically non-gated breeds, who are just, it's really sickening. It's just sickening for all horses, but for me, across the board, it didn't matter what non-gated. Could have been a Rocky, could have been a Tennessee Walker, could have been a Pasifino to I can't even think about it. Not just a saddlebred, but there's another really well-known gated breed, not non-gated, and I can't think of it right now. But anyway, what happens with the gated breeds, especially the Rockies, I handled so many of those in Pennsylvania before I moved to Florida, is people take them, want them for their really calm and easy, good-natured temperament, and the fact that Rockies are one of the most versatile gaited horses to begin with. They're really good at everything, even Western dressage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really easy to get to develop the Rockies 2-beat trot and 3-beat canter. So they're real versatile. It's easy for them to go back and forth between gaited and non-gaited movement. So long story short, they take these Rockies at 2 and they want to flip them, right? They want to flip them because they're usually they breed them for their color. You know, we've got one here that I started in Pennsylvania, and now he's here. You know, he's 14 now. I started him when he was 4, and he belongs to someone else now. But the point I'm making is they're so easy and calm and sweet, right? Well, they totally take advantage of that. And they start these young horses out and blow them. They absolutely blow their minds. And they blow them because they start them too young, and they may not really put them through an educational process like I do. They don't, but they start them on the trail. And it's a go, 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 go. They just gate the hell out of them. So all these horses know is a running walk. They don't know how to walk. And I'm not talking, I don't know the gaits specifically. I just know the horses and I know the movement. But they get them into these paced running walks through the whole trail ride. The horse's mind is blown. They're too young. They're too inexperienced. They're overfaced, overwhelmed. Push them through everything, and then here you go, 30 days, this horses, everybody wants a trail riding horse, right? Everybody wants a really sound trail riding horse, and these horses go for like 10,000, just like that, just like that, just like that. So, and then they call it, yeah, they've got training on him. Here, I'll put him in the arena. He knows how to go. And the horse has no balance. It's one of the things with gaited horses is they are very weak in the hind end in general, as it doesn't matter what breed. So gaited horses, you really have to develop their hind end, especially with Tennessee walkers. So it's really sad. So anyway, when you are retraining, wow, it's a harder road than starting a horse by far. And you know, a lot of people don't think that way because they think, oh, I'm buying an older horse and this horse has experience, this horse has been ridden, this horse has been handled. But the problem is 99.9% of the way what that horse has learned is all wrong. It's wrong for the horse, and it's just wrong. It's just really lazy, uneducated, slapped together shit. And just because you put a bunch of rides on a horse, or you can make a horse stand still, or you can tie him up while you groom them and mount them, doesn't mean shit, you guys. And it just, you can tell it just really pisses me off and makes me sick to my stomach. So the complexity of starting a young horse is you really need to know what you're doing. And so a lot of people will avoid that because they don't know the ABCs. They don't know the building blocks. They are not following a program like what I've created. So they go, oh, I'll just buy a horse that's already been started. And then you're just opening Pandora's box of problems instead of creating Pandora's box of possibilities. It's really what it comes down to. And that's one of the things I keep pushing so hard with my podcast and my YouTube videos and everything I do, my monthly webinars, is take the time to learn the right way, okay? Because you can restart your horse with my method and you can start your horse with my method. But take the time, because it's going to take less time in the long run, and it's going to cost a hell of a lot less money, a hell of a lot less. You joining my mastery membership program or my OTTB course is a hell of a lot less than sending your horse to me for training, and I don't take horses anymore. I mean, when you think about it. So plus you're learning your horse, you're developing your horse. Mm-hmm. No one else is. It's your relationship. And so often the biggest problem out there too is when you send your horse away, it comes back with even more problems, or comes back with they might have fixed X, Y, and Z, but then what's going on with ABC. So it's quite a risk, quite a risk. I'm going to read you guys start out with a little bit of a story here. And basically the story is going to tie into what we were talking about weeks ago with the horse's nervous system. And you guys will understand why, because it's so important that we talk about understanding what happens to the horse when they are in a learning frame of mind. and what happens to the horse when they're not in a learning frame of mind. And one of the areas that bothers me, why I'm a revolution and so outspoken, is 97% of the shit that's out there, and there's new stuff coming out all the time. We're going to start doing some comparing and contrasting with videos next month, aren't we, Sabrina? We're really going to get ourselves in some hot water. We won't give any names, though there will not be any sound, but you guys might recognize some of these trainers.
She loves it.
I do love it because it's bullshit. It's dogma, and I'm here to bust on it. And any one of these people that I'm going to be bringing into the light here next month, they can have a conversation with me because I'll be able to talk to them about it. It's wrong. What happens with so much of our training and retraining is desensitization and mechanics. We are constantly, we don't even realize it. Even when we are doing natural horsemanship, you're just turning your horse, it's all mechanics, really. There's no connection. So I don't care what these trainers tell you, what language they use, they're all lying. Most of them are all lying, and they're all stealing, as I keep telling you guys, the language and manipulating you. Because you don't know any better. And you know why you don't know any better right now? Because nobody's come forth until recently. I just launched my mastery membership last year, a year ago, and nobody is come forward really heavy in my industry until recently because there's more competition now. And all they're doing, and I remember this being a budding clinician back in 2009. When I was my first year out as a clinician at the Horse World Expos, and I was the first one, I said this in one of my podcasts earlier, I was the first one to show it and talk about relationship, connection, and communication. And those were my words. And I was the first one to talk about energy. Woo! It was, yeah. But anyway, and my horses were my portfolio. So I didn't just talk the talk, I walked the walk. And my horses had never been to expos, they never showed. It was very over-facing for them. They got scared often. And the coolest thing, and I didn't think this at the time because, of course, I wanted to look like a pro, but I also was totally honest. And I would say, look, you guys, this is the first time for my horses. Please don't clap too loud. Please, just if you can just watch and try not to scare them. But one of the things that people would say when they would come to my booth over and over again is, God, Caroline, it's so nice to see a clinician and their horses be real. Like my horses weren't push button, they weren't dead broke, they had obviously lots of challenges, and we were still working very seriously on retraining. But the key thing that we had was that amazing connection. And even when they would get startled or scared, either they wouldn't leave me, but you could just see them petrified at Liberty, or they would leave and they'd come right back and they would just envelop me and hug me. And it was just the whole grounding, everything that I teach, the spirituality of it, of the relationship, it was so powerful. And you have to be really careful. You have to be really careful. And I don't want to also, as a professional, I don't want to get to the point, because I'm not a well-recognized name yet, I don't want to get drowned out by everybody else. I don't want to be drowned out because someone else is using the same language I've been using for over 10 years now on my website. It's populated through Google and your SEO and your search engines and your keywords on YouTube. But you got to be careful. You guys really need to compare and contrast. You really need to spend time training your eye and not just jumping in because somebody says and tells you what you want to hear. You've got to take the time to really study. So here we go. Restarting horses in general propelled me down a different path of learning. None of my early experiences, study, and training with some of the best out there could have prepared me for the level of reaction and extreme behaviors I encountered with the horses I began rehabilitating. There were so many extreme cases too. To understand why they did what they did, get to the cause, and to help restore them, I had to learn more so I could offer more. This is where I soon found myself on my own. There wasn't much 15 years ago as far as gentle or compassionate horse training. Most of the general horse trainers use the typical buzzwords like trust, partnership, safe riding horse. And even the few that appeared to be true whisperers use treats to motivate and reward their horses. Not to mention, you guys, the internet it wasn't where it is today. Nothing I had been learning, including natural horsemanship, was working either. Most of the current horsemanship was too linear, science-based, and mechanical. It either produced dead calm horses who were really on autopilot and checked out from all the desensitizing and flooding, or it aggravated an already highly charged horse, turning them rogue. Learning the different types of horse training currently available was like opening Pandora's box of problems versus opening a box of potential. I had to find a different way and a better way for the horse, including my own. In order to fully understand what was happening within each troubled and traumatized horse and how I could change it, I began searching for answers that led me down a new learning path, giving me a new lens to view horse training from. My roadmap was found in books and by stepping back. As soon as it all started to click and my troubled horses began feeling safe enough to learn, I started writing articles in hopes of getting the work out there. I also became a clinician and started presenting what I learned. It was difficult backing up my theories and experiences. There just wasn't a lot of research available about retraining the traumatized horse. While the proof was in the final product, producing a sound, healthy, and happy riding partner, talking about using energy, somatic experiences, and becoming attuned with horses just wasn't discussed, understood, or even mainstream. When I got accepted into the equine affair back in 2010, and I had to audition. So I just started in 9, and I got accepted, you guys. And I think I attended 5 expos in the year of 2009, and so that gave me credibility and enough for the director of the equine affair in Massachusetts and in Ohio to pay attention to me, because she they're all different. All the directors of these horse expos, some of them you have to audition. Some of them you always have to audition, but once you get in, they have to decide if they want you. And some of them are like, that's fine, you can come every year. It just depends on the person is what I'm saying. And she was particularly particular. So she had watched me and she accepted me for 2010's Massachusetts Equine Affair, which was phenomenal success for me. And, but she told me, this is in 10, and she said, I wouldn't have accepted you anytime sooner because talking about spirituality and horsemanship is just still so new, and it really scares a lot of people off. And so, it was amazing though. I mean, my success was so huge, you guys, that I closed my doors 6 months later. That's a whole nother story, but I shut down my facility. Yeah, that's a whole nother story. And it also has a lot to being a new business and really your business growing too fast, you becoming too successful, and you can't control where it's going. And I didn't like where it was going. I didn't like the people that I was attracting, believe it or not. So I had to stop. And other things came into my life, like my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time. So there were other factors. But anyway. So while many people were interested and wanted to learn, it was more intuitive than anything to me, making it hard to put into words. When I finally started teaching what I discovered, people flocked from all over the world to learn. But they gave up too quickly once they learned that much of what the horse needed had to come from inside of them first. There were no substitutes or shortcuts either. This made it challenging for me as I was a newcomer going up against old mindsets, teachings, and mainstream popularity. While I studied and practiced honing in on my skills, I began studying human psychology, trauma, and the effects, specifically PTSD, and the effects of trauma in healing practices. Also, being a clinician opened my world, which I loved, I met so many new people. It's a big networking opportunity. So I met a lot of our big named clinicians and professionals, had dinner with them, became friends with some of them. And I met so many neat, wonderful people. And that just opened me up to this whole world of energy, which I was very familiar with, but you only know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. So I thought I knew a lot, but now I was meeting these people. Have you read this, Caroline? Have you studied with this person? Have you done this, that, or the other? And there were no online courses back then. So you literally had to go study with someone or take a clinic or a course or a one-on-one, weekend course. So it was really amazing because for me, it was a huge networking support group that just validated. And they didn't have a lot of experience doing what I did with the horse, but that's where I really got, tuned into and turned on to somatic experiencing and what it meant being somatic and intuitive and the chakra system. I was like, oh my God, that's what that feeling is inside of me that vibrates like a magnet when I'm connecting with horses. It's the chakra system. And one of my apprentices, who was a 20-year, she had her own studio, 20-year energy practitioner, had her own yoga studio, craniosacral. She just gave me a book. It was like this thick, and I read it in a weekend, and I cried because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. It was all about the chakra system. Holy cow. But there were no books except the old ancient wisdom before medicine became medicine, how to heal. So when you go back to the Greeks and the Egyptians, the Native Americans didn't really write or talk about this, but you really have to go back centuries to understand the history and origins of the chakra system. So there was nothing really except for Carl Jung, Jungian theory. Carl Jung was the first psychotherapist, I think is the right word. And I did study him, not just in college, but he was the first that actually talked about the chakra system and the emotions. And he wrote books on, without disclosing, privacy with his clientele, he wrote books on all of the experiences he had as a therapist and the dreams. It was all dream associations. It was so powerful. There's very little out there. So I went back to books, and like I said earlier, while I was reading this, I also stepped back. I stepped back from learning from other people. I stopped, and I started to journal, and I started to observe more with my personal horses, and I'd already taken in lots of rescue horses and helped several rescue organizations in my area, because that's how I could learn, right, to help rehabilitate these horses, and then obviously give them an opportunity to be adopted out. And reading and watching and putting two and two together was just amazing. That's what I teach today. So I didn't learn this from anybody. If anything, I learned it from my horses and the psychology books. But you really have to understand the way the brain works, and our self-preservation modes are very similar to horses, and especially in the hippocampus area of our brain and in the way that we produce adrenaline or endorphin. So this led me, as I just mentioned, to studying all of this stuff. I began intensely studying the neurobiology of trauma, and we talked about this weeks ago, the polyvagal theory, the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous system, attachment and detachment theories, building relationships based instead of controlling the horse, but building relationships, and how to create new neural pathways by engaging the neocortex to overcome the patterned survival response of a traumatized horse. Now, I know this is a lot of verbiage and we're going to get into a little bit more terminology, but I'm going to try and stay out of it because weeks ago I really dived in with the true science definition and terminology of all of this. But if you guys want to retrain a traumatized horse or really become a rehabilitation specialist with horses, you've got to know this stuff. And most importantly, you've got to learn how to re-educate the horse, retrain the horse, rehabilitate the horse without pushing the horse back into the mechanics. Because horses learn quickly, they learn routine. Like people, they will create a routine or cling to a habit because it's comfortable, because it's what they know, even if the habit isn't good for them. And this desensitizing stuff is just crazy out there still. People are still thinking that that's the only way to help a horse feel better. And it's not at all. It's not at all. Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So I've learned throughout these years that aligning these ancient healing modalities with modern developments in the science and treatment of those who have experienced trauma can be successfully applied to also benefit horses. Those horses stuck in perpetual PTSD and survival mode. And one of the things, and I'll read about that's hard for people because you don't have the training yet, the trained eye as I call it, or the experience, is you don't know that you don't realize that horses can be stuck in self-preservation mode when they look calm. It's called the freeze mode. We have 3 self-preservation modes for humans and horses. They're identical: freeze, flight, and fight. And if you are a passive personality by nature, which horses are, then you're going to choose the freeze, the path of least resistance, the non-confrontational path. You're going to choose it. Or if you've become passive through behavior, conditioning through your family dynamics and your parenting, you've become passive or submissive, you're going to shut down. You're going to freeze. So freezing also means being shut down, checking out, going on autopilot, or going deep within yourself. It has nothing to do with being an introvert. It's not a personality type. It's a survival mode. And as I say all the time in my videos and in these podcasts, horses are passive by nature as a species. They don't like confrontation. They're not hardwired. That's not how they survive. They survive by fleeing, not really by fighting. And they're not aggressive. So they always want to get along. And they really understand on a very highly intelligent level how important it is to get along. And that's why horses will seek out friendships so quickly, too, for so many reasons. It's really deep and complex. So a lot of our horses are stuck. So weeks ago, I spent 3 podcasts talking about the neurobiology of trauma, the polyvagal theory, and how it all works with trauma and healing. Today I'm going to break it down even more in the hopes of making the subject easier to understand and applicable. We first need to begin with the autonomic nervous system. This is where all of it happens for the horse. So that is the autonomic nervous system. And you guys can write this down and Google it. It's divided between 2 states: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the sympathetic nervous system, let me find this real quick. Sorry guys, just give me a minute. I want to make sure that I get this correct. All right, we'll just, yeah, so the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system, if I'm correct, and I'll be reading more about it, yep, it is. It is basically, tools, the sympathetic is a horse's natural survival mode. Its response, its instincts to respond, okay, to something threatening. So that's the sympathetic. That's when the body goes basically on autopilot. It takes over. So that's the sympathetic. It's the parasympathetic, that's what I wanted to get straight, that is in charge of releasing the calm and the relaxation, the endorphin. And when a horse feels calm and relaxed, they feel safe enough to learn. So think about the system at this, for us to remember this. The sympathetic means survival mode, instincts. Horse automatically goes into that. This is really important. That's why I'm taking my time to break it down. The sympathetic nervous system. Horse goes automatically into survival mode. What does that mean for us? Freeze, fight, or flight. They're not thinking. There's no connection. That's the sympathetic, survival. The parasympathetic is learning, connection, social engagement. And we really have to understand these two, because most of the time, all of our horse training is teaching or thinking that they're teaching the horse when the horse is in a sympathetic state of being. You can't teach when a horse is in the sympathetic state. You can't. They are responding only, not thinking. They are responding by means of their survival instincts. Most of our horses choose the freeze mode. So you think because they've calmed down, everything's okay. No, they're frozen. They're checked out. That's why all of a sudden an accident happens and you get hurt. And you're like, I don't understand. My horse is so quiet and so calm, and then he just exploded. So, only in the parasympathetic state of being is the horse truly open to learning. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that means. So just remember these, because most of all your training, including your desensitizing, your natural horsemanship, all these gentler ways, oh, look what I can do with my horse. I can't wait to get into some of this compare and contrast stuff, because I'm going to easily be able to identify, oh, that looks really amazing, all that liberty you can do with your horse, and your horse is completely on autopilot. And it's nothing but mechanics. There is no connection. That is the number one reason why I stopped studying Pirelli so many years ago. It used all the buzzwords: connection, communicate, deeper relationship, a gentler way. Let's develop the horse's cognitive abilities. Nope. Smoke and mirrors. So, sympathetic nervous system in our horse, what does it control, you guys? Survival mode. It's all instincts. There's no thinking. There's no connecting. There's no feeling. The parasympathetic nervous system is when there's true relaxation, resting, digesting, play, and when learning can occur. Since horses are prey animals, they're hardwired for survival. Their neocortex is not well developed naturally unless cross-brain connections, this is another key area, are intentionally created. What do I mean by cross-brain connections? We have the sympathetic state, which is natural for a horse, right, and instinctive. It's their survival mode. How can we connect the sympathetic and the parasympathetic? And they're two different parts of the nervous system and two different parts of the brain. So let's talk about the brain real quick. What do I always say? Horses live in the right side of their brain. What's the right side of our brain? It's the same as a horse. It's the more sensory aware, sensory processing, intuitive, creative. What's the left hemisphere of our brain responsible for? Cognitive abilities, being able to rationalize, being able, this is a whole nother layer of a brain that the horse doesn't have, being able to dream, being able to create language, being able to, what's the word I also use often? Not just rationalize and have, higher learning and higher cognitive abilities, but we have the ability to, just think of it with our cognitive abilities. It's endless. Horse is limited because they don't have as many layers to their brain as we do. But where I'm going with this is because the horse lives in their right side of their brain, the right hemisphere. That's where they predominantly live in their instincts. Their left brain is very underdeveloped. Their ability to think, do some minute problem solving, but think, respond versus react is very limited. Opposite to us, we live in our left brains. We're always thinking. We're involved in technology, creating, analyzing, compartmentalizing, you name it. It goes on and goes on and goes on. Developing, oh Lord, engineering. Come on, it's endless. We don't live in our right brains very much. And what's our right brain responsible for? The more creative aesthetics and aspects of our being. And most specifically, in the way I teach, it's related to you becoming, me teaching you how to become more sensory aware, more intuitive. And then when I develop your right brain while you're developing your horse's left brain in my work, we start balancing out. And it becomes so much easier for you and your horse to have a common language because you understand each other, not just in a deep, connected way like Sabrina was talking about when two souls meet and you fall in love. There's that. That's very real with your horse. Your daughter did. Mm-hmm. Horses choose us and we choose them. Animals choose us too, and we choose them. But there's also this whole reality and science of the common language because you both can understand each other better. What does it mean when you understand each other better? Your horse is thinking more and you're more in tune, attuned, just like the horse. It's so important for both of you, especially us, because of our cognitive abilities, but it's so important for us to understand our horse's perspective and be able to communicate, connect, work with them, teach them, develop them in a way that works best for them, which is very nonlinear. That's the right side of the brain too. The right side of the brain is abstract. Not that the horse's brain is abstract, it's not that highly developed in that way, but for a horse, what does nonlinear mean? When they're presented with a problem, do they freeze? Now, this is an interesting fact. Do they go into fight or flight? In the wild, because horses are not screwed up, they freeze first. They freeze. They actually freeze. They don't panic. They freeze. Isn't that cool? They actually think, rely on the lead horse who has the most experience, not because they're dominant, but they have the most experience, to alert them in nanoseconds or a few seconds whether or not they need to go into fight or flight. But everybody gets quiet, tenses up, and gets real still. This freeze mode allows their heightened senses to be activated. What are they? Sight, smell is number one, and hearing. So they went from grazing, where sight and smell is being compromised, right? It's buried in the grass or the ground. Only the ears are radar. Now they've gone to head up. Let me take in the smell. Their eyes are amazing, their sight, and the ears are like radar. They know that when they band together, no pun intended, wild horses, that what's the word I want to say? A herd is safer. Okay, this is where in a very general way, it is safer in numbers, because automatically the herd is made up of mothers, mares. They all band together, no pun intended, put the babies in the middle. Yep, babies go in the middle. And those mamas will kill. There'll be flight, but there'll be fight for those babies. So, what do our domesticated horses do? 9 out of 10 times they go into flight mode. And that's bolting, running away. The fight mode would be rearing, bucking, any kind of oppositional, pushing through pressure. It's all fight. That's all fight. And that is very normal and instinctive to horses. It's part of self-preservation, is pushing through pressure. So when you put all of this together, wow, look at this picture. Look at how we've been doing it so wrong for so long.
Sure.
Yeah, and we're not even understanding, we're not helping the horse get in the parasympathetic nervous system. We're not helping them release endorphin or dopamine, the feel good, the calm relaxation hormone. We're like, oh, the horse is scared and fighting? Well, I'll show them. Let's run them around the round pen and sack them out. Oh, you're scared of a bag? Here, let me put the flag in your face for 2 hours. Oh, you're bucking because of the saddle? Well, let's get the buck out. Or let's put a bucking strap on you. Mm-hmm. Or a bucking rope. We looked at that earlier. That's a whole nother conversation. Oh, I was taught that. I was taught that too. Yep, horrible. In natural horsemanship by one of the leading experts. So, pretty deep, huh? Mm-hmm. No questions?
Amen.
Yeah, this stuff, you really need to think about it, you guys. I've been talking about this stuff for, like I said, probably a good 12 years in writing about it. I think my first article that came out in Holistic Horse, they're now online, been around for 20 years, was back in 2008. I was on the cover. And I think it was about PTSD. I can't remember. I did quite a few articles with them. But I'm better today at using better terminology and language and breaking this down than I was then, because it was so intuitive for me. And it's just where I've been my whole life with horses. For those of you that have heard me talk about my history and how it began, it began at the early age of 4, but it really began at the early age of 9 and 10. Truly, when I got my backyard horse, and I started at the age of 12 exercising school ponies before the students would take them to the shows, because I was the only one that cared. I wasn't the only one that could ride the buck out of them and stay on. That was true too. But I mean, I can remember frickin' letting go of the reins in the English saddle while the pony's bucking and running, just letting go and loving on the thing. I had no fear. I've never had any fear. I've had a lot of accidents because of that, and a lot of head trauma because of that. But I had no fear, and it always worked. Not having fear, but my technique or my approach. So I have a lot of experience with this. Now I'm finding words to help teach it and explain it and break it down. And I have a mastery membership. I have courses on this. Oh my gosh. So since horses are prey animals, they are hardwired for survival. We know that. Their neocortex is not well developed naturally unless cross-brain connections are intentionally created, and created with rhythmic, patterned, and predictable sensory input. I just gave you all a secret. So in all of my work on my online courses, I teach you guys about rhythm and the power of rhythm. Rhythm, by definition and by nature, is meditative. And when we start to produce rhythm, regulation, rhythm, a regular tempo, a rhythmic gait. When we start producing it, it's just like swinging or being rocked or someone touching you rhythmically. So we can experience rhythm, obviously, somatically, through our bodies, through our senses. It's what we hear, what we're listening to, what we see, and what we feel. So when we get locked into a rhythm, that means we start to produce endorphin and dopamine. This is key. Those are the feel-good, relaxed, calm states of being that overwhelm the body in a positive through hormones, through chemical release. And then this creates an open, trusting, learning frame of mind. Bottom line.
We have a question.
Yes. Great.
Maggie would like to know, would you describe the freeze shutdown as a form of dissociation?
Good question, Maggie. Would I describe the freezing shutdown mode as dissociation? Absolutely. Just know that we don't want to take it too far clinically, because disassociation is a really scary word in human psychology. And kind of serial killers language, disassociate. So I would rather use the language, and we have to be careful with our language, you guys, honestly. I would rather say detach. There's a definite level of detaching. Emotionally, this goes back to connection. They socially detach from us. There's no engagement anymore. They're gone, right? They've just checked out. So disassociation, I don't want to use that word. And just look it up, but it's really psychotic. And horses, yes, I have met a handful of psychotic horses, but it's mostly through inbreeding and accidents that affected their nervous system. And so it really wasn't psychotic, because that's a human word. But I would say that they detach. I would use that word. Absolutely emotionally detach. They detach from being present. They're no longer present. So that level of freeze is a trigger. They get triggered, they freeze. So they're no longer present. Great question. Thank you for that clarification. One of the things, a good giveaway for all of you, and this is how I learn and how I continue to learn and do my research, is if I don't understand something, I'll write it down and then I'll look it up. And I won't just look it up through Wikipedia or look it up on Google, Urban Dictionary. I'll look it up through the different ways that those words are being defined, not just one way. And then I'll take those words and see in the context who's using them. What's the context of these words being used? Well, Caroline's referring to them in this way. Is it anywhere else? And you'll find it. You'll find all the support for what I'm talking about out there. So, when you're learning, all of you, just don't learn one way in the beginning. I'm going to go against my method. It's not that you don't need to learn. I don't want you to not learn one way. It depends on what you're learning. But when you're starting to learn, you got to take it all in at first, and it does get really overwhelming. Ask my students, because there's so much information. So just don't get stuck with that.
I have another question.
Yes.
Lydia, first she asked reaction versus response, and I asked her if that was a question. She said yes. Is the horse reacting or responding when in freeze, fight, or flight?
Great question, Lydia, and we need to know this. So anytime a horse is in survival mode, they're reacting. Survival mode. Sympathetic nervous system, they're reacting. Anytime a horse is thinking, they are responding. Big difference. So anytime a horse is thinking equals responding. We want a horse that responds and doesn't just respond to a threat. If you're there, they need to respond to you. Where's that connection piece? Where's that trust? So this is where we're trying to override the sympathetic, and we can, with the parasympathetic. So, and it's not just the parasympathetic, because when a horse is in a heightened state, they're no longer in a calm state, right? But if you're with them, do they trust you enough to listen to you, to feel safe with you? That's the other really strong point I'm driving home to with retraining or training. And that's what you all are learning in the Mastery membership. And it's proving itself to you with your horses. Relationship. There's no mechanics. There's no fucking mechanics that's going to make that horse listen to you or feel safe if they don't want to or can't. Unless you, tie them down, throw them down, tie them up. So mechanics, I don't mean just big bits and tie downs. I'm talking about the mechanics of training. There is no training that's going to develop that horse to the point, you guys get this, that it's going to, its relationship with you and taking care of you. There's no training out there that's going to make that horse consider you before they consider themselves. Only the relationship is what's going to create that. There's no training. You see where I'm going with all this? You got sympathetic and parasympathetic. But what happens when the parasympathetic's not working and the horse goes into sympathetic survival mode? There ain't no way you're going to get that horse to calm down. Now, yes, there is a way. There are ways. I teach it. But the point I'm making is so many people just try to exhaust a horse. They go straight into the mechanics, desensitizing, run the horse around. But all you're doing is feeding the adrenaline. All you're doing is feeding the sympathetic nervous system. And the horse will eventually find another way to survive. Your flight can turn into a bucking bronco fight, or your horse will just shut down. We want the horse, when it goes from a parasympathetic relaxed state into a sympathetic heightened state, and we're there, we want to be able to keep engaging the horse. Keep engaging its left brain and keep engaging its relationship connection with you. Because that is, those two things together only, together, not separate, are what's going to keep that horse from getting worse and hurting you. A great example, an amazing example. Look at the wild Mustangs, the wild horses and their babies. They'll do anything to protect their baby. And that baby will do anything to keep with its mother. It will go through raging fires, raging rivers. So it's not overfaced. Its sympathetic nervous system hasn't kicked in to fight, flight, or freeze. It's overriding that because it feels so safe and has such a strong relationship with its mother that it overrides the sympathetic nervous system. You see where I'm headed with all of this. Now, there's definite technique and some mechanics that can create the rhythm, but you can't do these things by themselves. They're not separate pieces. You got to be able, and that's what you guys are learning in my courses, you've got to be able to take this technique, this exercise that is a structure, a container to help you develop the most amazing relationship and best ride and safest ride. Because it's real. And it still doesn't mean that if shit hits a fan, you can't get off your horse. There's been many experiences as I'm developing my horses that they've reached their saturation on a trail ride, always. They've reached a threshold and a saturation. And I realize at that point they care enough about me that they never go into their survival mode. Their first threshold is a freeze. They just freeze. And they check back in with me and I can feel their heart beating and they're saying, hey, I need you on the ground. I get on the ground. We can spend 10, 20 minutes, whether we ground or we just walk together until the parasympathetic comes in, and it always does. And then I get back on and we're fine. And this is another thing nobody's teaching you. Ride through it, kick the horse, make it happen. I'm like, look, bitches, the horse is telling you he's uncomfortable. You've just ruined everything you've ever developed by pushing your horse through and not listening to them. They're telling you, and I'm telling you, get the hell off. Hold your horse's hand. Make him feel better with you on the ground. Especially if you're not really good at grounding and you can't really ground when you're sitting on your horse. Get on the ground. Because all you're doing, like an electrical current through your spine to his spine when you're sitting on him, is running that current real high. It's just feeding off of each other. Get off. Make it better. There's nothing wrong with that. You haven't lost anything except you're going to lose your horse completely and maybe your safety if you keep pushing it. And don't ride with people that are going to act like that. Like, oh, your horse won, or you let your horse... I don't even understand that mentality. And honestly, you guys, I've never been around it. I hear it all the time from my students. I just never put myself in that position. I never rode with idiots. I mean, that's just me. I'm a tough cookie. I just don't put up with shit. I do put up with shit. But I actually have, we were talking about that this morning, I have a huge threshold in patience, don't I? Mm-hmm. But when I hit that, what's that? I hit that threshold? You better, I always have bail. Run. Yeah, you better run, Sabrina says. I always have bail money. I always got cash on me. Haven't been in jail yet. I always like to say, if we ever have an apocalypse, you're going to want me behind you, because I won't think twice about blowing someone's head off if they look crazy. I wouldn't think twice about it. I'm quite protective and quite clear.
We have another question.
Yes, another question.
Karen, I've been observing these two states, the P's and the S. My Mustang switches very quickly into the sympathetic system, and the challenge is to bring his focus back to the P's mode, to be able to connect with him again. This is very difficult at times. I'm assuming your method helps so much in this area?
Great question, Karen. My method is all about that. Every traumatized horse I've ever worked with has been, they're all like your horse. Your horse represents, your Mustang represents every traumatized horse that gets stuck in the sympathetic system, state of being. And so this is what I call working through. You need the tools and the experience, yes, my method teaches this, to help you learn how to help your horse work through it. It's so different when we have untainted horses. It's so different developing and starting a fresh, young horse that has no problems. You won't have any problems. The biggest problem you'll have is just figuring out your horse and how to work best with them. It'll be your problem, though. But when we get these horses that have been traumatized, they're always going to go into survival mode. And the hardest thing for all of you guys to learn is you can't, and this is hard. There's no one answer I'm going to give you, and no one technique, and no one approach. That's what the Mastery Membership is all about. It gives you so many different strategies. What if my horse acts like this and does this? Well, then you're going to try this. But they're building blocks too. So you'll start out with the path of least resistance, and so you need information. You need baseline of information. Now I know this is what my horse does when I do this. And you build. Everything is building. See, in this case, let's say it's lunging for your Mustang. Let's say you put your Mustang in the round pen and the Mustang just wants to run because it's been running around pen before. So it doesn't know how to relax, which means it can't think of you. It can't even respond to you right now. So you're relaxed and you keep talking to this Mustang and you keep trying. But as long as that Mustang is in that deep sympathetic state of being and on survival mode, it can't hear you. Can't hear you. So then that's not where we start. Worst thing you can do is try to start there. Horse can't hear you. You can't teach a closed mind. That's the problem. Everybody's trying to. Right, girls? We've got some of my Mastery Membership students in there. That is not where we're going to start. We are going to peel back. You're going to begin a whole new way of thinking, being, perceiving, and doing with your horse. And it's going to go so slow with building blocks. Knock on wood, you won't be making any mistakes. Your horse is going to show you where they are, and you're going to learn how to back off. Press the reset button, pause, before it gets any worse. Well, this sounds like our next webinar.
We have another question.
Yes.
Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Jennifer. We have two more, actually. So, Jennifer, in the wild, if mamas protect babies, are the stallions surrounding the mares?
No. Great question. This is Jennifer?
Yes.
No, this is what's wild. So stallions are aggressive. They've got testosterone. So are donkeys. I had donkeys. A donkey I raised from baby. So stallions' whole mission really comes down to three things. And they do predominantly mate for life. Doesn't mean there's any inbreeding. This is a whole nother subject that I talk about. But stallion isn't necessarily protecting the herd. He's just protecting his rights to the mares. So his number one thing is to fight off other stallions. That's really it. Now he does support the lead mare, and they predominantly will mate for life. A wild band of mares, it's all about the women. It's a fucking tribe. It's all about matriarchs. It makes me want to cry. Horses, the number one thing that motivates them is relationships. And you'll see in a larger band of mares that they're all made up of mom, grandmother, aunts, sisters, daughters, cousins. Doesn't mean that there's any inbreeding. Just means they go out and get impregnated and they choose to come back and raise their family. Their social intelligence is off the chart. And you really have to understand social intelligence because it's huge. It's very complex. And it has to do with social order and community and partnership. And when I say community, there's hierarchy, everybody learns how to contribute and work together, and they accept their positions. And even though you've got a lead mare and a lead stallion, especially with the lead mare, you'll have other lead mares that come in and help support the lead mare. And we did a video yesterday will be in our video library. We'll have a snippet of it on YouTube as some free parts. But I was talking about pushy horse behavior in our video yesterday, and I was talking all about the horse's perspective. And I was talking a little bit about this, and it just blows my mind how misinformed we are really about horses. And the point I'm making is how deep a friendship is to a horse, and how much it matters, and how much they need it. And that when horses seek out their friendships, they seek them out for a lot of neat reasons. And one of the things we brought up in the video yesterday, and I brought 3 of my horses in, all different types of personalities, these 3 horses. I had my 2-year-old baby, who's kind of, he's not very dominant, he's not passive either, and he's still a little pushy. And then I brought in my 10-year-old Lovey, who's bossy. She's a mare, the female. Mares are just like women. So she's a bit bossy. She's also a pleaser. She's not passive. She's not dominant either. And she and the baby are like brother and sister. And then I brought in Big Zor, my 18-hand Frisian sport horse, who's very dominant. And it's like we got to watch these 3 horses interact. They were grooming each other, or they were checking in with me and playing around with me, and then they'd go back to grooming each other. But they each have a different relationship with each other is where I'm going with this. The baby has a different relationship with Lovey than he does with Zor, and vice versa. And to complicate it even more, the baby might be intimidated by Zor, but he's not intimidated by Lovey. And Lovey might intimidate Zor. You see where I'm going with all of this. And so it changes. It's not that basic. It's just like our cliques with us. You know, you get along with certain people, and there might be 3 of us in a clique, Janine, Sabrina, and me. And, you know, Sabrina, I'm just going to use the word respect. Let's say Sabrina respects me, but not as much as Janine. So Janine's going to act a little differently, but then Sabrina might respect Janine more than me. But I mean, you see how it gets complex. And so we have, even though we're this unit, like a band of horses, we all have different personality types. We really do, even horses do, and different different relationships with everyone in that dynamic. Even though we make that whole dynamic as a whole, all of us are part of that dynamic. And you just don't know. Where Zor might be dominant, he's also the biggest pussy. He's scared of so much. It's unbelievable. So he might be dominant, but I've seen this in all of my herd dynamics here, that if he's scared and the baby isn't, baby will come up and touch him and go, what are you scared of? And look at it and touch him. And he'll actually help Zor. But then Zor will go and boss him around. You see how complex it gets. So in a wild herd, the stallion is really there just to mate and procreate. And he does offer support, but it's really the band of mares, like females, that take care of the children. That's instinctive to us. It's hardwired in us. They band together. I often mention, and you guys can find it if you YouTube it, I just don't know where this video is, but I found it months ago again on YouTube. It's basically a 5-minute clip, and in the beginning, before I knew what was going to happen, I started crying. But it's a lone wild mare giving birth, and the baby's just a few hours old when all of a sudden, and she strayed away from the herd. That was her mistake. So she strayed away from the herd, and she gave birth. Baby was still laying down, wasn't even standing up yet, so only a few hours old. And 4 or 5 lone stallions. It's not usual for stallions to be together. That means when you find lone wild stallions together, they haven't found or created a band of mares yet. What they do is they go and tease other stallions' herds and try to take those mares away. That's why you get fighting. So you have 4 or 5 of them, and they don't give a shit about the baby. They come to mate with her, but they're very aggressive, and she goes ballistic. She fights off every one of these without trampling her baby, and you see her running around the baby, stomping all around the baby, bucking, lunging, and you see all these stallions trying to come after her. Oh my God. You're just about ready to turn it off, and guess who comes in to save her? The band of mares and all of their babies. So this group of mares that were looking for her or heard her come in, surround her, kick ass, and they help the baby. They totally get the baby up, check the baby over, help the mama. You got the younger little babies with them. And the other cool thing about wild horses is they often allow any baby to suckle. They always have that one major relationship, but they share. It's how they cooperate for their survival. It's really beautiful. Oh, what a video. I talk about it all the time. Great question. Do we have another one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before we wrap up.
Maggie, do you
Hi, Maggie.
think that horses have an easier time downshifting to a parasympathetic state from a higher state of arousal excitement compared to humans? Obviously, horse and human Pacific. But I ask because it seems that sometimes, as humans, our intellect blocks us from downshifting more than horses sometimes.
That's a great question, Maggie. Is it easier for horses or humans to remain in the parasympathetic, the relaxed state? I think it all depends. I certainly have worked with as many people as I have horses in the sympathetic nervous system. I think we play tricks on each other. Our intellect is deceiving. And I've done a lot of study and research on the human brain, and it's really scary. Like the evolution of the brain and how over time our brain hasn't just gotten bigger because of technology and we use it so much more, but our brains have devised this way of basically faking us into thinking that we're safe. And it's a way of kind of replaying the video over and over and over again in our minds to create that habituation, basically that pattern recognition, so that we stay more comfortable. And so that's a hard question because people in general are so hard to change. I always say with the horses, I can force a horse to change in a very loving way, you guys. But when they would come to me for training and I was supposed to fix them, They didn't have freedom of will to say, I'm out of here. They always had freedom to express themselves. Of course, I needed to hear what they had to say because that told me what they needed from me during that learning. But I mean, they couldn't just leave and say, I'm out of here. I don't want to change. Where people don't want to change. People will do anything and everything they can to stay comfortable. And so for me, horses, you have to learn how to help the horse find the parasympathetic or the endorphin release. But when it becomes a habitual pattern, cognitive pattern of recognition, horses will re-regulate. They will learn how to re-regulate is the key word here. People can too, but most people play games and they lie to themselves, they lie to other people, they masquerade, they fake it. That's a hard question. It's like I equate that question to when I ask my yoga and energy students who've been doing yoga for their whole life. It's one thing to work on your own energy, and it's another thing to work on your energy and another being's energy, the horse, and learn how to synchronize and align those energies. That's what I teach. So it's kind of like we just play way too many games, humans. I don't know if I really answered that question because I find that people masquerade and they hide behind their emotions. And I'm an energy person since I can remember, I could feel things. It wasn't something, now I've learned to read it, of course, but I could feel it. And so can horses, so can animals. So that's a hard question to ask. But if you know what to do with the horse, you can help them re-regulate. And that's when they can make that switch and release the endorphin. Yes.
Janice, I read that a horse mirrors you. What are your thoughts on that?
Great question, Janice. Yes, absolutely, horses can mirror us. Absolutely. That's actually going to be another podcast of ours coming up in October. Big time. So stay tuned for that. And I talk a lot about that in my Mastery membership. Horses can mirror us on many levels and in many ways. And I have personally experienced, we talk about this all the time, how as I continue to evolve personally and spiritually and intuitively, so do my horses. And it has nothing to do with training or working. It just has to do with how connected we are. And I don't mean that my horses will mirror me anymore so much as they understand me too. And I've given them such a healthy sense of well-being that they have autonomy. They're obviously empathetic by nature, horses, and they really feel and they understand emotions. But my horses don't own my emotions. And when my students come to work with my horses, they don't own the students, but it doesn't mean they don't care. It's beautiful. It's really something to behold, to come and I have so many testimonials and pictures and over the years of my horses hugging my students and helping them, like during one of my intuitive workshops. And yet it doesn't mean, unlike us, that they own my students' emotions. But they hold that sacred space. So mirroring, absolutely. But I want to make one important point that I will talk more about in that podcast that we're going to do about mirroring. Mirroring really happens in the very early stages, meaning, like I just said, when you are healthy, you are your horse. Just think of this. When you're healthy, what does healthy mean? Healthy to me means you have a healthy sense of dependence and independence. You are empathetic and compassionate and sympathetic, but you have a healthy boundary, meaning you don't take it on or own it. You can still cry, you can still feel of someone, but it's not an extreme emotion. Anytime you have extremes, there's no balance. And so mirroring can be an extreme. And so often our horses are looking, I'm going to cry. So often our horses are looking to fit in. They're looking to be accepted. They're looking to belong, and not just and they're not given an opportunity to find those relationships in their natural equine herds because they're stalled all the time. They're not allowed out with anybody, or if they are put in a pasture with somebody, it doesn't mean that they like that horse. And then what about their human? So they're just trying to fit in. Remember, by nature, horses are followers, and they're always looking for a way to connect, that social engagement, connect, because they understand on an instinctive level how important it is to their survival, and on an emotional level. So I've seen mirroring to the point where I've seen horses suicidal. I've seen horses depressed. I've seen the exact same emotions as my students. That's one of the reasons why I closed my doors in Pennsylvania, because of the audience that I was attracting in 2010. I was the only one that was coming out brand new talking about spirituality and chakra systems. And I was, no offense, I'm going to be profiling because New England in America is a very liberal, artistic area in general. And a lot of those people, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, a lot of people that are, if you're extreme, if you've got extremes, you are not balanced. And a lot of these people were depleted and needing something, and they came and gravitated towards me. And when I worked with them and their horses, it just robbed me of everything I had. I thought I was in a psych ward. I've never seen horses. I mean, I was working with troubled horses, but I've never seen horses morph into their person and act like their person and absolutely talk about dissociative or detached. There were instances where I was like, wow, this is way, and then I couldn't fix it or I couldn't make the change. It was insane. It was almost like the term, is it Munchausen's, when the mom keeps telling you that their kid is sick or their kid has all these ailments, when it's really the mother creating them. Oh, I don't know if I'm saying that word correctly, but wow. So yes, but when you are healthy and you're balanced and you are not depleted and you come from a place of abundance and strength and self-esteem, and this goes for the horse, it doesn't take away from your ability to care, but you don't get so sucked into it that you lose yourself. Whew, that's going to be a deep one. All right, one more question. I need to wrap this up, guys.
We don't have any more.
Okay,
But
good.
Jennifer said, thank you. In this ancient ways of being that have been programmed out of us human women, which is why I asked. A beautiful answer. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I agree, Jennifer. I agree. Okay, so let's just wrap this up real quick. This is great. Thank you, guys. I love all the interaction. Ooh, I could go on all day. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Let's now talk about how horses end up in self-preservation or survival mode. See, whatever area of the brain is activated the most becomes stronger. This is why the horse, it'll be easier and easier for them to stay there and go there. It becomes stronger, thus becomes their go-to response to sensory input. This means that when a human or animal exists in a survival state for an extended period of time, resulting from a traumatic event, they will become stuck in that state. We kind of went over this. Their self-preservation mode or survival state will now become their future response. It's their go-to button, as I call it. Their future response to new stressors or whatever triggers them. How do we change this? By first becoming aware of what the visual survival symptoms look like in your horse. Now, real quick, this is harder than it sounds because so many of you are learning the very basics. The hardest thing to this day, if someone were to ask me, Caroline, what's